Today we're going to learn about how to get ourselves organized, we're going to learn about the creative process, and learn how we can foster our own creativity and magic. Stay tuned. Hey, and welcome to the Magic Minute, where we take tricks and turn them into real magic. My name is Alan, and if this is your first time on the channel, I'm a full-time professional magician, and I give my tips, tricks, and tutorials to help elevate your magic to that next level. If that sounds neat to you, you should hit the subscribe button and that little bell icon. That way you don't miss a single video. Today we're talking with my good friend Trigg Watson. He is a world-class talent. God, I've known this guy for about 12 years. I got him on the show here tonight so that way we could talk about his creative process and how you can foster your own creativity and even get organized with your magic supplies. Yeah, he's done it, and he's got a killer solution. So you don't want to miss this one. Stay tuned. It's a little bit of a long one, but it's worth every minute. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Magic Minute, where we take tricks and turn them into real magic. Tonight, I have my special guest. His name is Trig Watson. He is the winner of several magic awards. He is on Penn and Teller School List, Masters of Illusion, and most recently was a creative consultant for Magic for Humans on Netflix. Please welcome my guest and close personal friend, Trig Watson. Trig.
Hey, Alan. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for agreeing to be on this. I know you're a busy guy, so thank you very much.
Yes, I had to clear my very busy schedule of being 100% of the time.
There's that, but I mean, we're looking at this this beautiful array of organization you have behind you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this old thing?
Good Lord.
I may or may not have set myself up right in front of it because I'm very proud of my new
and you should be.
inventory.
I want to ask you, I guess there's no better place to start than right there. What is that? What prompted you to do it? How can other people do it? There's a lot of questions about it.
Yeah. Well, this shelf behind me makes me feel slightly better about my hoarding tendencies. As magicians, we tend to accumulate a lot of things, a lot of supplies and props and things we bought at conventions and with full intention to perform but never did. I build a lot of my own ideas, my own props, so I have a lot of crafty art supplies as well. So it got to the point where I had so many things to where I would go to the store to buy something that I didn't know I had because of the fact that I'd forgotten that I'd already bought it once. All my props, all my supplies were in such disarray. It was just difficult to remember where everything was. So I finally took it upon myself to basically record everything that I use as a magician, boxes, and label it and create a whole database using Airtable, which is a great app I can recommend to people. And I basically got everything photographed and everything documented now to where I can actually take my phone camera, scan it on the barcode on each box, and it will tell me exactly what's in each box. And if I have an idea for a new magic effect, whether it maybe involves floating an object or maybe I need some sort of fabric, I can actually search for those items. Like, oh yeah, I remember I bought that clip card doohickey that I bought at a convention. I wonder if I still have that, and then I can actually search, clip card trick, and it will pop up and tell me which box and what position it is on the shelf. So it's a little insane. It's a little neurotic, but it's incredibly satisfying for an obsessive person like myself. And it's all, what I'm finding too, Alan, is that it's really helping me think with a minimalist attitude, which might seem a little bit ironic looking at the gargantuan thing behind me. But now that I have this set up and I have everything that's important to me as a performer in these boxes behind me, when I acquire a new thing, it now doesn't just go thrown on a shelf. I have to decide where it's going to be stored. And if it doesn't, if I run out of boxes, run out of space on this shelf for this new thing, then I'm getting rid of something. I'm saying, you know what? Maybe I don't need that box of 100 bouncy balls that I touch. Maybe it's time to let those go, give them to Goodwill, and make room for a new thing. And there are times that I've accumulated stuff. Like I'll dump out the trash and notice that someone's throwing away this great cardboard box that I could use it up for a new prop. And now I'm finding myself, I'm bringing stuff back and deciding, is this worth the trouble of putting it on the shelf and storing it? I'm finding that I'm much more careful now about, what I'm bringing into my life and my shelf. So it's an exercise. It's a new concept for me. I'm trying to be a little bit more careful about deciding what I really need.
It's
it's helping me do it.
It's an impressive display, and I can't even imagine the amount of man hours that went into putting that all together. But
yeah, it was a solid 2 weeks of work, and I hired someone to help me as well. It was tedious. It was tedious.
But man, now you can do anything you want. You know exactly where it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've found myself, I've been working more on social media the past week or so, and I've found that I've been able to create stuff so much faster because I haven't wasted time searching for things or running to the store. If I have an idea, I've been quarantined. I haven't really had to leave my house for, I've been able to come up with a lot of, cool new ideas or new magic effects that I want to perform. And, if I'm like, oh man, I need an HDMI cable to hook up this microphone, then I just search HDMI cable and I know where exactly to grab it. I think it's saving me a lot of time in the long run.
It's like a real world search engine for physical products.
I mean, I essentially have a baby inventory that similar to what Amazon or a warehouse might have, like a retail warehouse. I have my inventory tracked and recorded and know where I can find it. So I was definitely inspired by the sort of larger inventories that I guess companies would use to manage their stock.
That's super cool. And you say your neurotic attitude, but I think that that has helped develop the amount of success that you've had in your different ventures. Whenever you go for something, you're so precisely organized. I remember one time we were hanging out in Deep Ellum and you showed me your what was it, Evernote?
I do use Evernote for note taking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we were going through there and showing me like all of the ideas you had for different effects, and then you had that organized, and you had like just about anything related to your business or creativity wise. Everything was just neatly labeled, but there were like hundreds of pages of things, and I was just amazed at the level of control that you have over all of these things. You don't lose a thought. If you have a thought, you have it recorded somewhere where you can recall it.
Right.
That's right. Incredible.
Well, thank you. I don't know that this sort of approach works for everybody. I just happen to be a very
not me.
I have plenty of friends that are incredible artists, insanely talented, and they are very comfortable living in this sort of, they're just sort of these whirling dervishes where they just go from idea to idea and sparkly object to sparkly object, and they're just so present, and the minute they have an idea, they dive in and they just start making, and I appreciate that a lot. For me, I need to be very organized before I feel like I can mentally afford to make a mess, so I need everything in its place. And then when I have an idea, I carve out some space, mentally and in my environment to make this little thing. And when I'm creative, when I'm building something, everything kind of is messy, but I immediately go back to a very organized environment again. It's like this clean slate. And that's just, again, part of, I feel like, we kind of go through life getting better about understanding about how to trick ourselves into making the best work. It's really, we're just in battle against our own brains, figuring out how we ourselves tick and setting up our environment to allow us to make the most of what we've got.
Well, I love how you're talking about, you're controlling chaos is what you're doing. And you actually have a way to do it. And I'm curious about how that works into your creative process. You talked about that some with how you need a clean slate and you need that kind of, but where does the ideas, how do you generate them? I think that's something that we all would like to be able to do more, and you are one of the most creative people that I know, and to be able to just seemingly pluck two completely unrelated thoughts and merge them together in such a beautiful homogeneous way that there's a skill to it as much as there is a gift to it. I think you are the master of like intentional creation instead of just finding a shiny object and seeing where the rabbit hole goes. You can create on demand, it seems like, anyway. And I'm curious about the thought.
I don't always feel that way, but I appreciate. I'm grateful that I
from an outside observer that appears.
Yeah. I don't. if there was if I have if I get a booking for a show, or I have an idea for a way to perform that fits a certain theme, I will often first think about what is already available, what is off the shelf, what are the magic effects that already exist that I can use. But often I just find that there's so many different ways in which we as magicians get asked to work that often what I need just doesn't exist yet, and I have to. That's what breeds the creative problem solving. If anything, I think what I've gotten really comfortable with as a creator and as a performer is just being willing to start out with the what if question first, sort of having trust in myself that the methods will come if I come up with a really good idea. So I'm generally starting with imagination first. If I was really a magician, if I could really, do anything, what would I do? And sometimes, I'm working within a specific company's branding, and other times I am thinking more about just what would be cool for my show. So, for example, I have a routine in my show that involves on order, which I think you've seen. And that started out very cleanly with, if I was a real magician in 2020, I guess I created it in 2018, 2019. So if I was a magician in that year, what would I do? And I probably wouldn't be doing a card trick. If I was a real magician, I would be able to decide what I want on Amazon, and it would arrive instantly without any wait. I wouldn't have to wait around a few days. It would just instantly fall out of the sky and land in my hands. And that was the what if. What if I could think of something I want to order online and have it appear instantly on stage? That would be cool. That would be relevant to my audience. Now let me work backwards from there. So instead of starting with, what's a cool magic trick that I can then find a modern premise for, I'm starting with the premise and just trusting that I will find the magic effects that allow me to bring that premise to life. I think the most interesting magic and the most innovative magic comes from that approach. Worrying about the engineering second. And yeah, then it's just a matter of playing matchmaker. I mean, you have the idea of okay, how can I make an Amazon box appear? Well, there are plenty of magic apparatus in the world that allow you to use a small object, that old bunny where you can produce a bunny out of a box. Maybe I could do a mailbox, and maybe I could have the Amazon box, be hidden in the mirror compartment, or you start just thinking about, okay, what would be the best way to bring to life what I want. So I'm constantly looking at magic principles that I've read in Tarbell Course in Magic, or just seen through pouring through magic catalogs as a kid, online tricks and effects, and finding ways to update them. I did a similar thing a few years ago. One of my first real forays into online video, I came up with a way to make a cup of coffee appear through an iPad camera. This is when iPads had just kind of started coming out, and I figured out, oh man, that iPad is kind of, with the flap and everything, with the cover, it kind of looks like a temple screen. Those old props had like a trifold screen and could fold it up and produce an object. I wonder if I could use that same sort of principle with an iPad and a cover, and then you take advantage of the fact that the screen could, allow me to make it look like I'm morphing this object in real life. And again, that was just a marriage of new technology with old principle, and blend them together and make something new. So that's generally how I like to make stuff. That's the most fun for me.
That's cool, and I like that approach because it instead of trying to just come up with an idea, which seems like such a nebulous thing that you're never going to get anywhere, if you have a problem to solve, then you can work backwards.
Yes.
And that seems like, okay, now you have the thing, and now you just have to figure out how to do it, which is the more fun and easy part, I would assume. Well, not in every case, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think most of my routines have a lot of layers to them. There's not usually one. I think that's what makes strong magic too, is if there is just one deception in a method, in a routine, it's not the strongest. But if you can start layering methods on top of each other, then you start really creating these sort of impossible to backtrack routines for your audience. So, my Amazon trick is essentially it's a prediction combined with an appearance, combined with some technology magic, all rolled into one. So at the end of the day, the audience might think, okay, well maybe. So I've landed on the appearance of the box actually falls from the ceiling and lands in my hands. That's how it appears. But even if they figure out how that works, they still don't know how I got the exact item that someone merely suggested into that box. So they run into a roadblock, and if you can kind of get methods to cancel each other out. Nate Staniforth and Darwin Ortiz, some two really great thinkers in magic. I really admire talk about that idea of using layering methods on top of each other so that your audience goes down one track, comes up with a dead end, but per layer, and suddenly they're lost, and they're stuck in that moment of astonishment for longer as a result.
Yeah, well, I remember, a good example of that, I think, would be one that everybody has seen, or nearly everybody who's watching this will have seen, is your Foolus routine with the comical iPhone. And there are a lot of levels to that too, and I really enjoyed the kicker with the Angry Birds.
Oh yeah.
Right. So they're like, no, and then I think that's something else you're really good about in Magic is you have those multiple layers, and then you also have like these little, I guess I'll call them codas, like these little that little at the end of a lot of your effects, that little extra piece that if you didn't know was there, you wouldn't miss it, but that you do, you can't take it out. It is the thing that just puts a nice ending on the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, a lot of magic tricks kind of, I think, are stuck with setup, big reveal, applause, it's done, which is fine, but it's sort of nice to have little effects that happen on the way. And in the same way that a comedian will, they use the term tags, right? So there's the joke and then there's the tag. So you can actually get some extra laughs after the punchline. And I try and find ways to tag my magic too. One of my routines that comes to mind, I have a routine where I perform in the character of a New Orleans street performer. And I do a ring on string routine with a borrowed wedding ring, and pretty standard sort of ring, goes on the string, goes off the string. I have a big, sort of relatively unique finale where I use a version of Richard Sanders Interlaced, and the ring ends up on my shoelace. But at the very end of the piece, I've sent the spectator back to their seat. It feels like the end, but then I take my hat off my head, and my hat fills with money, like it's tip money, because I'm a street performer and I get tips. And that's a nice little button. People aren't expecting it because they think the routine is over, and then it's a nice little kicker that sort of, punch.
Yeah, I've seen that routine. I've seen that. Well, I don't know if it's okay if you want me to talk about that, where people can see you perform, if that's something you want out on the internet forever.
You're welcome to share. Yeah.
Okay. So we didn't talk about this beforehand, so I don't want to just take liberties. But Trigg performs at Checkered Past Winery, and he is where you can see his live show, and it's really good. And I've got to go see him. I've had the pleasure, and it's something that if you're in town, you should definitely go see, because it's a real treat. And that's where I've seen your New Orleans routine. It's where I've seen the Amazon production appearance routine. You do a beautiful thing with a salt shaker, which I won't spoil it. They gotta go. They just gotta go see it. They just gotta go Checkered Past Winery and go see the show, because it's a real treat.
Well, thank you. Yeah, fingers crossed we'll be back up and running. It's a monthly show. It's called wineandmagicdallas.com. That's the website where people can go find out more about the show. Hopefully when the quarantine lifts, we'll be back up and running. For me, the wine bar show is a really great, it's a consistent venue where I get to play. And that's often the first show that I start working in new material, because it's an audience, or it's an environment that I'm used to performing in. It happens every month. I think it's important to have places that sort of serve as laboratories. I know Alan, you too. There's a couple of venues in town that you also work. We have a mutual friend, Edward Ruiz, who has a gallery and performance space, and both of us have used his variety shows as a way to work on material. And it really is critical. You have to find places to get in front of an audience that you feel like you can take risks with.
Yeah, and that's something I think I'm glad you touched on that, because there's the wisdom of practice, do effect it until it's perfect. But then there's also, you can do it perfectly for yourself, or in my case, for my wife or my son, right? But there's a point where you go, is this any good? You have to be able to try it in front of a live audience and get unbiased, real, raw reactions to what you're doing for people who've never seen you do magic before. And it's scary having to add when you're adding new material, because you're like, I don't know, this could totally bomb. It could suck. I don't know. Maybe it's the best thing I'll ever come up with. You don't know how people are going to respond. So, I try to encourage the viewers on this channel to perform, right? You've learned a lot of magic. You got it. Go out and perform some of it for people, right? And then that feedback you get will help you improve a lot more than just doing it in front of a mirror. You get the effect as good as you can get it. Make sure it's fooling, and then go do it, because that's where you're going to really grow, is from those live performances. And I try to do that a lot. Of course, Edward, I do a lot of work with him. I work in restaurants a lot, and so that's a fabulous place to just hammer on the same material, table after table after table, for hours at a time, days, a couple days in a row. And that's where I've been able to hone my craft.
Yes.
But you have to have some kind of space like that, even if it's just walking out on the street, and you got to do it that way. Just, hey, you want to see a trick? You're buying coffee or you're doing whatever, have a thing and do a thing.
Yes. Yeah, there's I was fortunate to get to attend a teen magic convention called the Lance Burton Teens Weekend when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And at that weekend, we were given a book called Advice from Lance Burton. And for those of you who don't know, Lance Burton was a headlining magician in Las Vegas, now retired, incredible show. But he was sort of a mentor to some of the young magicians, including myself, that would attend. And his book had an essay in it called Find, and that's a Beatles reference. The Beatles sort of became the Beatles when they were working in a venue in Hamburg, Germany. They spent hours and hours playing together, really just starting out as a cover band, a bunch of dudes just playing music. And over time, spending hours and hours, 7 days a week, for, I can't remember how long a time it was, but when they came out of Hamburg, they had a unique voice, and they found their point of view as a band, and, obviously proceeded to become the global sensation that they were. So, I've struggled to find my Hamburg in my own magic career. It's tough for us magicians because, unlike comedy clubs, or for comedians, there aren't a whole lot of magic venues, and fortunately that is changing. There are more and more these little venues popping up in different cities, but you really have to find places to be bad, find places to get in front of an audience. And like yourself, I worked restaurants a ton in high school and college, and that did wonders for me, just getting comfortable as a close-up performer. Mm-hmm. It's harder as a stage performer to find consistent venues.
It is.
Yeah. I did. So the closest I think I am to a really consistent gig for me was in college. I worked at the Improv Comedy Club on Sunday afternoons. And I think we've worked together as well there. And that was a great place just for me to be in front of an audience on sometimes almost a weekly basis. I was there at least 1 or 2 times a month for a while. And that was the best place for me to just get instant feedback. And I'd always record my shows and figure out what worked, what didn't, make notes, and improve for the future.
That's all fabulous stuff to do. All fabulous. Because if you can't. You can think in your head, how did it go, and try to remember how things went and how the audience responded, but recording it and then going back and watching yourself
It's painful to
phenomenal.
watch. Often it's painful
Yeah.
to watch, but it will give you some very good information about stuff you don't really want to know about you as a performer. Not realizing that you're blinking every time you do a pass, or not realizing that you have this tick where you say a filler word every few seconds. Those are the sort of things you learn. That's certainly my
Right.
tendency.
Mine is the word right.
Okay.
And I hate that. I know that about myself from watching. I even have a friend. Well, we have a mutual friend. I'll use his initials, DH.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's been mentioned a couple times on this channel. So if you watch a lot, you know who I'm talking about. But he told me too that even well into his professional career, he can't watch video of himself performing anymore, because it's just a total cringe fest. He's like, even as polished of a performer as that man is, and as much as I have a tremendous amount of respect for that man and the work that he does on stage, he can't watch his own material anymore because he's just like, the cringe. And it's tough, but you will never get more informed about what works in your show and how to be a stronger performer and have a better stage presence than watching recordings of yourself. So it's fabulous, and thank you for sharing that, because I think it's super useful.
Sure.
I want to make sure because we're cutting down on time here. I don't want to keep you longer than I promised I would keep you. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about just going over my notes and making sure that we're talking about what we want to talk about. I want to ask you about your work on Magic for Humans, because I know a lot of the audience is going to be super curious about that too. I think it's one of the reasons you're in California now, or decided to stay there, was because of your work on the show. And I'd love if you could share a little bit of your experience of being on the program, how that all came together, and if there's any effects that we can see in season 2 that I could attribute to you, or if you're allowed to talk about.
Unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I can publicly share which.
Sure.
Exactly
No, I understand. I figured maybe not, but
Yeah, but no, it was an incredible experience. I mean, I've come to appreciate the value of just being a fly on the wall with new things. I mean, if there's a market or a style of performing that I want to maybe consider for myself, I always try and see as much as possible of it. I've started working on a virtual show because of COVID-19, and I made sure to watch my other friends who were doing virtual shows. Alan Pletty, of course, was one of the first people I saw doing a virtual show. A buddy of mine, Peter Bois, who's a terrific college performer, did a beta test of his virtual show. I think on the same night that you did yours, Alan, and I watched that as well. So just seeing, just kind of watching other people that are a few steps ahead of you is often really valuable. So I did the same thing with Magic for Humans. I mean, for me, working as a consultant on Magic for Humans was an amazing work opportunity, an opportunity to work with a lot of other creative minds, but also a learning opportunity for me to kind of have a grad education in making a TV show, specifically a Magic TV show.
Mm-hmm.
In and around designing the magic effects that would end up being performed by Justin Willman on the show. I also learned about what the considerations are for taking magic in a live setting and putting it in front of a camera. And there are many. There's so many things you don't think about. Creating magic for television is just a different animal. You have different concerns. There's different ways that you can take advantage of the medium, but there's also a lot of drawbacks that the minute people are watching things on camera, they're inherently more suspicious and need more attention that what they're seeing is what they would see if they were there live. And finding ways to prove that is true can be a challenge. I mean, everyone on the team, is always very proud of the fact that we never had people on camera on the show that were hired to pretend to react to the magic. All the reactions were people actually responding to what they were seeing, and that's really important, I think, because as TV magicians, that's all we can really rely on, is just capturing a genuine reaction.
Yeah, well, that's and you guys do a fabulous job with it. Glued to my seat for the second season. So that was, of course, I had an extra reason to watch, but
Sure. Yeah.
it's been
Well, and
incredible.
it's exciting. We filmed 2 seasons worth of content last year, so the
Wow.
third season is actually coming out mid-May,
Oh,
and that will also be all that content will also be content that we all worked on last summer.
that's
so yeah,
awesome.
be sure to look out mid-May. Season 3 comes out soon.
Wow, something to look forward to. Yeah, if we're
Indeed.
still stuck inside, that's definitely watching it. Right? There's
Yeah,
no
no,
excuse not to binge
absolutely.
it.
There's not too much else to distract you from being there for sure.
Wow. We went over a lot of stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention or specifically talk about where people can see you perform? We talked about Checkered Past. Any other projects you have coming up that you want to let people know about? Or
Yeah. Yes. Fingers crossed. If the world goes back to some semblance of normalcy, I hope to kick my show in Dallas at Checkered Past Winery. I am continuing to focus more on building content. So over the next few weeks, I hope to be cranking that out. So you can feel free to follow me on all of the things at Trigg Watson. That's T as in Tom, RiggWatson. I'm on the TikTok. I'm on the Insta, on the Facebook, and that's a whole nother medium. You know me, I've started tiptoeing into TikTok land recently, and
Yep, seen
and
that.
learning how that works is a whole nother education. Figuring out how do you capitalize on the trending hashtags, these challenges that are popular on TikTok. How can we create magic that theme so that it gets shared more? That's for me. That's a whole nother playground that I'm learning about.
Awesome. I did that with the bottle cap challenge, and that was a thing. I did a bottle cap levitation, and that took off. There's a real power to that.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, I really am enjoying the creative challenge. It makes it easier instead of just sort of sitting at a blank sheet of paper and saying, okay, I'm losing my microphone. Instead of sitting at a blank sheet of paper and thinking, okay, I need to write out some new ideas for social media content. If you just scroll through these hashtags, things will come to you. I actually, just as of today, right before this call, I did a post for today on TikTok that is based on the paper towel challenge. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this.
I don't know this.
Okay, it's cool. It's a cool effect. It's basically where people are writing some words on the back of a sheet of paper towel, and then folding it over to cover up the words, and then writing a smaller amount of words on the front so that it looks like it's one thing, and then you dip the paper towel into the sink, and because paper towel bleeds through pretty easily, the words behind soak through and become visible and change the message. So thought, this lends itself really, to potentially a magic effect. So
sure, yeah.
I found a way to use the some spirit writing, sort of fire spirit writing, where you take a lit match and touch it towards the paper, and it spells out a word or an image. So I took the paper towel challenge, and instead of putting it in water, I used fire instead. So I'll see how it goes. It may perform really poorly, but I'm enjoying these creative challenges of, again, taking all this magic that I have behind me and finding ways to slot it into trendy, topical content that online.
Wow. It's been an amazing pleasure hanging out with you, Trig. Not only is it good to see you, but I think that you've provided everybody who watches this channel with a lot of really wonderful thoughts and insight and ideas. So thank you so much for your time and for being on the show tonight.
Oh yeah, no, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and yeah, we'll hopefully do this again soon.
I hope so. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Shelter in place, and I'll see you on the other side of this. Okay.
Sounds good. Cheers.
Cheers.